Good afternoon and welcome everyone to one of the NRI topical sessions, Navigating Global Cyber Threats via Local Practices. My name is Jennifer Chung, I'm with .Asia, and I'll be your moderator for today. Just a quick housekeeping note for this people sitting in the U-shape. These mics are pushed to talk, so they're not the ones that are on the entire time. Just a quick reminder. So, navigating global cyber threats. In an increasingly interconnected world, cybersecurity challenges are growing in scale and complexity. Global cybercrime is projected to cost $10.5 trillion annually by this year, posing serious risks to institutions, economies, and fundamental rights. So this session is going to look at the good practices and the actual impacts, how national, regional, multi-stakeholder cooperation can build stronger and more resilient cybersecurity frameworks while balancing innovation, security, and the protection of human rights. We'll have a key focus on the tension between the cybersecurity legislation on the one hand and existing privacy and data protection matters on the other. In some cases, stricter regulations on service providers, such as DNS operators, may also inadvertently undermine effective rights-respecting security mechanisms that are already in place. We're going to hear from all the different speakers from NRIs around the world here up on the stage, but of course this is a dialogue and we invite everybody that I can see down there. If you would also like to move up to the U-shape, we really do welcome you. If you're not comfortable, I think there's also mics on either side as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. We have an expert panel to set the stage for everyone. I'm going to do a very quick introduction, and then I'm going to go into the policy questions that I will ask them. To my right, we have Mr. Carlos Vera. He's the executive director of ISOC Ecuador. Next to him, we have Mr. Dennis Burtis, the professor of Global Security and Technology, a senior fellow at the Hague Program on the International Cybersecurity and Institute of Security and Global Affairs, Leiden University. He's also the project coordinator of EU Cyber Direct. He's also affiliated with the Netherlands IGF. Next to Dennis, we have Ms. Leah Hernandez. She is the founder of Appenditech, and she's also affiliated with Panama IGF. To my left, we have Mr. Dejan Dušić. He's the CEO of RNIDS and also affiliated with Serbia IGF. And finally, but not least, we have next to Dejan, Ms. Lati Thalaka. She is the chairperson of the ZA IGF multi-stakeholder committee and is affiliated with South Africa IGF. So with this illustrious panel, actually, and good NRI colleagues, I'd like to turn first to Carlos to speak really from your point of view, IGF Ecuador as well. In a world where AI and IoT are increasingly shaping our lives, what are the key cybersecurity concerns faced by local communities? And how can we strike a balance between fostering innovation and ensuring security in these emerging technologies?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here at the IGF 2025 in Norway. I'm Carlos Vera from Internet Society Ecuador and from IGF Ecuador in Latin America. Please allow me to read you to necessary time constraints. As we agreed today, AI and IoT are no longer distant concepts. They are in our homes, schools, hospitals, and increasingly in our local governments and public service. This technology offers great potential, but they also bring real cybersecurity risks, especially for local communities. Let me highlight three of the most pressuring concerns. First, data privacy and misuse. IoT devices collect a lot of information about us. But in smaller communities where the digital knowledge may be limited, that data is often collected without real understanding or consent. This creates real risk of surveillance, profiling, or unintentional harm. Second, vulnerable infrastructure. Local authorities and small organizations often lack resources to protect their digital systems. Thus make a prime target for cyber attacks, especially ransomware, which can cripple schools, hospitals, or even our water systems. And third, trust and inequality. When AI systems are biased or when IoT systems fail, people lose trust. And those who are already vulnerable, rural communities, minorities, low-income groups, are often the ones most affected. So how do we move forward? How do we embrace innovation while also protecting our communities? Let me suggest 4 principles. 1, security by design. We must demand that AI and IoT systems are secure from the beginning. 2, local empowerment. We need to invest in training and capacity building, not just for engineers in big tech corporations, but for the citizens, for the local people, for the local leaders. They are the ones who manage, who use, who maintain the system, and they deserve the tools and knowledge to do it safely. 3, participatory governance. That's what we call, and we are talking about all this IGF in Norway, the multi-stakeholder governance. It is real necessary to participate. We need inclusive process where citizens help shape how AI and IoT are used in our lives. And let me have a small reflection about this. While United Nations, European Commission, or Union, and ITY, they play a key role in the making of standards of participation in the forum, we still need more civil society spaces like internet society, when the civil society, the academic, the private sector, and the tech community can participate. And 4, global frameworks for local action. In this kind of things, in this kind of public policies and this kind of law, one size fits all doesn't work. We need to take account of the local community necessities and reality. And I have another reflection here about the ethics. We are talking about ethics, but it's not only what you as a user can and cannot do. It has to be also with what governments and what companies can and cannot do. They have all the information, they have all the knowledge. They only do not release to final users. So we have to work on ethics also beyond the final users. And without security, without cyber security, there is no sustainable innovation. And finally, a call to action. Let's empower our communities to lead the way. Thank you very much for your question, Jennifer.
Thank you, Carlos. You brought together actually very, very important points, and thank you for setting the scene about that. I think the 4 points that you gave us to take away is actually very good action points that we need to have: security by design, local empowerment, and participatory governance, especially when we're looking at the multi-stakeholder model here. Actually, a quick reflection before I go to our next speaker is, this morning I heard at one of the sessions, he came up and he said he was a coder, and he said, I'm here, I'm listening to all these policy people speak, but where are the people who make and do and code? We really need to bring in this, all of these communities that actually can take action from the policy that we shape here to be able to have real impact. So I think that's actually very important to have that as well. I'm now going to move on to Mr. Dejan Dujic. And I know, for our NIDS, you are the CCTLD for Serbia, and also, of course, Serbia IGF. And maybe a little shift towards, that question. Do you think, and will stricter regulations on tech service providers really and truly improve overall security? What are the costs for both service providers and end users?
Thank you for interesting question. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, regulation is necessary as threat becomes more and more sophisticated every minute. But in most cases, regulation is too slow to follow technology evolution. We had many examples of that, like GDPR now, NIS2 directive. So the evolution of regulation and technology are not fast at the same time. So that's the reason why community involvement is essential. So we cannot sit and wait for the regulator to solve all our problems. Raising awareness, that is something that we have to do constantly. Improvements are needed. Following up to stricter regulation can help us to be the top of our game, perhaps much faster than it's done nowadays. 5 years ago, we didn't have those sophisticated threats like today. However, tech keeps security on a top priority, reinvents solution to protect infrastructure and services it provides. That is what keeps our system stable and running. Caution is also needed by all parties, however, especially for lawmakers. In general, it's really challenging to find balance between privacy and security. When we speak about time age before NIS2 directive, our TLD decided to collect fewer personal data in our database, and we came to that solution in cooperation with Data Protection Authority. But now when NIS2 came into force in most countries in EU and we are preparing our local laws, we will have to collect same amount of data as time before of the most probably we collected before. So when we started first time our domain registration in our TLD, we collected documents and we allied with GDPR. We decided that no documents are needed to collect. In our zone, abuse is small and we have 150,000 domain registrations and around 100 domain reported abuse in 2024. So, of course, the law applies to everyone, but numbers are cruel sometimes. And definitely there will be cost for users and operators as well, because operators have to improve their systems, but users also have to be prepared to use those improved systems as well. And when we speak from perspective of DNS operator established as a private foundation like Serbian TLD, multi-stakeholder cooperation is essentially important. So since we don't have any executive power regarding fighting abuse and cyber crime, involvement of relevant parties are necessary. So on a local level, we cooperate many with organizations in order to raise awareness. With our partners, we organized many cybersecurity conferences, workshops, and hackathons. So also in concrete cases of cybercrime, we also need the assistance of relevant authorities. So I have a recent example from a few days ago. It was a situation with several domain names that with the website that are offering illegal weapons on them. Since we are not dealing as a registry with the content, we contacted the registrar to check the registration data. And after the registrar confirmed that data is correct, we couldn't do much. And we started communication with the local police, cybercrime police, and after continuous communication of few days and mostly few weeks, they managed to provide public prosecutor order, and we finally suspended those several domains used for weapon selling. So that's just one illustration, an example how cooperation is important and sharing relevant data and knowledge among stakeholders is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane. You actually touched on a whole host of really critical items that is actually being discussed very much now, DNS abuse in the ICANN context as well, looking at how it's not just policymaking in a very narrow scope there, but in actual practice, registry operators, registrars as well as local jurisdiction, local law enforcement. There is a whole host and chain of how you can actually address and mitigate and report and finally do any takedowns if that is what it is. I do note that the original question was asking really about stricter regulations, but you gave us a very comprehensive mapping of what it actually means to the end user, to the operators, and actually for the internet, I guess, as a whole as well. So thank you for that that sharing. So now I'm going to turn over a little bit to policy approaches. I'm going to go over to Ms. Leah Hernandez. So Leah, I guess from your point of view as founder of Ipanditech and also from the Panama IGF point of view, which policy approaches can be adopted to effectively educate social media and internet users to identify and avoid emerging cybercrimes, such as online scams and phishing attacks? Leah.
Thanks, Jennifer. Are you hearing me? Yeah. Good morning. Well, good morning. My name is Leah Hernandez. I am a Panamanian lawyer. I'm based in Panama City, but my work is focused more in the Central American region and the Spanish-speaker Caribbean. So I'm going to talk based on my experience in my region, mainly in my region and in some countries in Latin America, because we have the same issues regarding to the application of cybersecurity or cybercrime standards. And actually, I think that to effectively educate the users on social media, social network, on the internet is not enough. The capacity building. It's necessary that the states establish the issues as cybersecurity or cybercrimes like as a state policy. Most of the countries in Central America and the Caribbean, they change government every 4 or 5 years. And for that reason, they also change the priorities. So maybe in Panama right now, my hometown, cybersecurity is a priority but in 5 years, there's not going to be a priority anymore because a new government and the new party arrived to the power. So for that, I think that it's not enough to say that we have a commitment with the cybersecurity or we have a commitment with the cybercrime. We must really be and incorporate in our agendas, the agendas of the governments and the policy makers, topics as cybersecurity, digital security, cybercrime, and also it's very important to adequate our legal framework to the new trends on cybercrimes times. We have two main cybercrimes conventions in the world, the Budapest Convention and the recently approved United Nations Cybercrime International Convention. I know that not all of us, we are agreed with the text of these two conventions, but most of the governments of our region have approved and have signed Budapest, but till now they haven't adequate their local legislation. So for that, I think that it's necessary to take the best of all of these documents, the Budapest Convention and the UNESCO Convention, and maybe adequate our legal framework, because if we don't have like a crime in our criminal code, it's very difficult to avoid this kind of conducts in the cyberspace. So also have to say that there is not sufficiency the legal frameworks, the reference, and we must take actions. We must take action. Stop saying that cybersecurity is the priority in my country. We just educate the citizens from the kids to the teenagers to the senior people, and to explain them how the internet really works. which are the risks to use the internet for this or this way, and don't tell them you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't act like this, because when you talk with the kids and you say don't do that, they are gonna try to do it. So it's better to explain them how really works the internet and the consequence of they don't use the internet in the right way, and after that, thinking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the internet, and we must educate them so they know how to identify the real risk. So I think that this is my opinion about this question, Jennifer. Thanks.
Thank you, Leah, especially bringing up, there is always this shift. If when you have a shift in administration, there's a shift in priorities. And the fact that we do have the two conventions also doesn't mean that, it has been reflected in all over, global and I guess to the local jurisdictions and legislations as well. Very important part about capacity building. I think it needs to be done holistically across the board as well. Now we're going to turn over to Dennis Burders. I guess maybe with the context of what you heard from the previous speakers, I don't know if you can pull this into, your response as well. The question really is, how can national and regional multi-stakeholder cooperation help build a stronger global cybersecurity resilience? Dennis.
Thank you, Jennifer. I will try to draw in a few things, but I will focus on a much more smaller but actually quite big elements. I want to focus on the relationship between cybersecurity, information sharing, and resilience. So keeping it a little small. So most countries, also internationally, say, okay, the value of information sharing is like a mantra, right? Then also the value of public-private cooperation in information sharing is also a mantra. So I'm talking about the sharing of information about digital vulnerabilities, about incidents, about methods of states and criminal actors, so threat intel in short, right? So everybody realizes the value of information sharing for digital resilience, and yet in practice it proves to be something that is actually very difficult. I've seen many forums also here talking about it. In my country, the Netherlands, every single cybersecurity strategy we had underlines the importance of information sharing, and every single strategy we had says we need to do better. Right, so that's where we are. Most recent cyber strategy, 2022-2028, again puts information sharing front and center, and also acknowledges that information exchange is still fragmented, and it undermines the cyber resilience of companies, of organizations, and of society as a whole. And to a certain extent, and I think many people realize that that's easily explained, right? All the organizations that have information that would affect others, that would benefit others, they also have good or at least understandable reasons not to share that information. So information is often not shared, and there are reasons for that, right? If you look at different organizations, intelligence agencies, right? They have lots of information. They never tire of telling us, right? We know everything, but they have a professional focus on national security that comes with an emphasis on secrecy. They have limited incentive to share information with others. Internationally, they have a quid pro quo relationship with their sister organizations in other countries. And they also have an organizational interest in keeping certain vulnerability behind because they may prove useful for their own work. So transparency there is not optimal, let's put it that way. Then we have companies, governments, organizations. They all have information that is useful when they have been breached or attacked. Bigger companies will have information about what they see in their own networks that would be useful for others. But when it comes to breaches and vulnerabilities, they also have very little incentive to share. It can lead to reputational damage. It can open them up for claims, for liabilities. So sharing does not necessarily get them any meaningful response from other companies, right? So why share? Then we have threat intel companies, right? The Mandiants of the world, basically. They have a lot of data. They have a lot of information on their clients, mostly. Mostly the big companies do Western big companies, so they have mostly biased information with a Western bias. When you talk to them, they see the value of sharing, but they're not that eager to share, which is also logical because it's their business model to use and market that information. So resilience, societal resilience is nice, but profits is better. So no transparency, there's client privilege, and there's NDAs on the information. The most effective sharers, hooray for internet governance, I think are the CSIRTs and the CERT community, right? They have a long-standing tradition in international community of exchanging information And they see it as a core value to do so, right? So internet governance organizations, they focus on the resilience of the internet as a global network, and they work more along the lines of what you would call like a health and safety approach, right? Rather than a security approach, and that does something. Okay, having said that, how do we overcome blockages to information sharing, right? I have a few points to make, 3 points. So one is a little philosophical in nature, right? So starting where we left off with the C-search, basically, say, okay, how can we extend the logic of health and safety to more forms of information sharing, right? Can we get more levels or sorts of information in the frame of sort of first medical responders, where we try to make sure that the patient is okay, rather than into a security frame of mind where we're looking for, okay, who is at fault, why have they done it, what are the consequences, who is liable, etc. Right? So there is a balance there to look for. Related to that, because I think these communities are communities of trust, and someone mentioned this before, is how can we create communities of trust? And I think this audience here is probably well aware that certain sectors, for example, like the banking and financial sectors in the Netherlands, but elsewhere as well, they have created what they call information sharing and analysis centers, right? The so-called ISACs. In these ISACs, sectors exchange information about incidents, threats, and vulnerabilities. There is no question that banks are each other's competitors, right? That is clear. But they do have a common interest in sort of keeping the digital financial system as healthy and as well functioning as possible. So that helped. What also helped is the closed nature of ISACs, right? It's a closed system. There's a trust system, there's even an amber system and a red system, what kind of information gets written down. So it's a community of trust, but it's also often facilitated by the government. So this is something where governments can do something. Lastly, and the NIS2 directive has already been mentioned, there's always regulation, right? And regulation is not always the best option forward. But for example, in the Netherlands, if we look at the implementation of the EU NIS2 directive, that will mean that in the Netherlands, 5,000 companies will now have reporting obligations and certain obligations to have preventative measures, as opposed to the 200 that were designated like that before. That is a huge difference. The idea is, of course, that this will create more resilience. Whether that's actually the case is something that we will have to see in the future. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dennis. That was a lot of very good information and a lot to unpack. I'm not even going to attempt to try to summarize any of this before we go to our next speaker, but I think you really highlighted the big problem and the tension between having this information and the incentive to share, and shifting that paradigm to what you mentioned as health and safety instead of, liability and faults. I think that really allows us to look at it a little more clearly. I think on the other context, before I go to our next speaker, is this has also played out in the ICANN context for those who do participate in ICANN policymaking, and I guess that community as well. There has been a lot of tension and a lot of urgency from the part of law enforcement to request for information, but the problem still is, how do we authenticate these requesters? How can we make sure that we have the obligation, or the legal framework to do so and to disclose this information? So thank you very much for highlighting this very inherent tension between that. Hopefully we'll be able to dig out some and tease out some possible solutions going forward. But I do see that it is not on one party or two parties, but it is a whole host of considerations. And again, multi-stakeholder is what we're talking about here. So with our last but not least speaker, I'd like to go over to Ms. Lati Thaka from South Africa IGF, and I'd like to get a little sense of what the best practices are and the impacts, and I think she wanted to give a little bit of thread of the legislation and regulation in South Africa right now, and what the recommendations are, I guess, coming forward for cybersecurity and that part from the South African point of view.
Okay, thank you, moderator. My name is Leti from South Africa. I am the chairperson of the South African Internet Governance Multi-Stakeholder Committee. I think just before I start, I just need to remind us that cybersecurity is not just a technical challenge. It is a human rights, development, and governance issue. The only way to address it meaningfully is through multi-stakeholder cooperation at national, regional, and global level. So going into best practices, South Africa strongly supports a multi-stakeholder approach to cybersecurity. We collaborate globally and regionally through AU Malabo Convention, the SADC strategy. We also participate in GFCE and ITU's African initiatives. Nationally, we have built structures like the Cybersecurity Hub, which is a project by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. It is a national computer security incident response team project that was established to make cyberspace an environment where we can all safely communicate, socialize, and transact in confidence. This project works with stakeholders from civil society, it works with government, it works with the private sector, it works with the technical community and academia in preventing and responding to threats. Our South African Police Services and State Security Agency also coordinates cybercrime investigations and threat intelligence together with private sector and ISPs. And I think it's also worth noting that our IGF is also very strong when it comes to addressing and engaging in matters of cybersecurity, where cybersecurity is not just discussed annually or allocated annually, it's also integrated in all the thematic areas. And I think we've also seen firsthand the impact of inaction, where data has revealed a 22% year-on-year increase in ransomware incidents targeting South African institutions. We have had, I think amongst others, digital fraud in the banking sector. We've had ransomware attacks on public institutions. Ordinary citizens are also getting attacked on a daily basis. And in addressing these, we are active in research on cybersecurity. We have a few initiatives, and I've already mentioned the Cybersecurity Hub. We've also got the Cyber Command Center, and where legislation is involved, we have a national cybersecurity policy framework, the Cyber Crimes Act and the POPI Act, the Protection of Personal Information Act. However, we've also noticed the growing tension between the cybersecurity laws and our constitutional duty to uphold privacy and data protection, where our Cyber Crimes Act criminalizes malicious activity, while the POPI Act protects personal data. Together, they offer a legal balance, but the test really lies in the implementation, and without proper oversight, there's a risk of overreach, public distrust, and suppressed digital freedoms. We found that the law enforcement sometimes maybe faces delays due to legal processes required under POPI Act to access digital evidence, and civil society has also raised concerns over potential overreach in surveillance protections of the Cyber Crimes Act. So I think we just need to strengthen oversight mechanisms such as judicial review for data access and update laws to ensure proportionality, necessity, and transparency in surveillance. And I think that's why we're also just calling for three things. We're calling for policy coherence, where cybersecurity strategies must go hand in hand with privacy protections and rights-based governance. We're also calling for global and regional collaboration through harmonized laws, shared intelligence, and joint incident response. And we also need to have an inclusive governance where youth, civil society, and underrepresented groups have a seat at the table. Our National Internet Governance Forum has proven that this model does work. And if we don't act decisively, we risk widening the digital divide, weakening human rights, and undermining regional trust. So we just need to remember that cybersecurity resilience is not just about defending networks, it's about defending people, democracy, and dignity in a digital world. South Africa is ready to collaborate, we're ready to lead, we're ready to learn, and we cannot afford to wait.
Thank you very much, Lati. I think that ending was actually very important for us to remember. We're not just defending the networks, we are defending humans. Thank you also for sharing all the work that is being done right now with South Africa. I think, I hear a thread amongst all the speakers that this is a multi-stakeholder effort that we need to address cybersecurity risks, but we need to balance it with privacy, and we need to balance it with having inclusive governance where underrepresented groups do have a seat at the table. For the next 20 minutes, we have an open floor, and I think I already see some indications that we would like some speaking over there. I think this is Bangladesh IGF. Anu, please go ahead. Anu.
Hello, Jennifer. Thank you. This is Mohammad Abdullah Konu, Secretary General, Bangladesh Internet Governance Forum. As cyber threats grow in scale and complexity, it is clear that while the challenges are global, the responses must be grounded in local realities. In Bangladesh, we have witnessed how community-based awareness, capacity building, and multi-stakeholder engagement can help counter cyber threat more effectively than top-down approach alone. The Bangladesh Internet Governance Forum has been working to promote trust, security, and responsible digital practice by fostering collaboration between government, agencies, civil society, the private sector, and youth groups. Our local cybersecurity framework are aligned with global norms, but are also tailored to our unique socio-economic and digital context. We believe that regional and local internet governance forum play a critical role in sharing best practice and ensure that cybersecurity is not just a technical issue, but a shared social responsibility. By building resilience from the ground up, we strengthen the global digital ecosystem. Let us continue working together across borders and a stakeholder group to ensure a safe, more inclusive digital future for all. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Anu. I am also going to see if we do have anything online. We do have our online moderator, Godsway, who is checking online. He has reminded everyone who is participating remotely to also indicate whether or not you'd like to ask questions or actually give some comments. Godsway, are there any questions and comments or requests to take the mic?
Hello, hello everyone. I hope I'm audible. Okay, so I'm Goswe Kubi, the lead facilitator for Online Safety Sake, and also representing Ghana IGF here. I think for now, we don't have much questions, but I'm hoping that before we finish the session, there will be some questions.
Thank you very much, Godsway. I see on the floor Mary Uduma.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. If we are to navigate globally and locally and our cyber threat via a local partnership, we have mentioned already the multi-stakeholder process. So there's a lot of collaboration to be done, a lot of capacity building to be done, and a lot of awareness creation. There are some people that scroll this and they don't even know that they are being attacked. So in the password management, cyber hygiene, so those are some of the things, and collaborating with law enforcement. And the law enforcement needs a lot of capacity or capacitation. So capacity building and development with the law enforcement is very key. That's what we have started in Nigeria, in the Nigerian Internet Registration Association, the .ng managers. We have this capacity building and exchanges and engagement with our law enforcement to be able to bring to fore, some of the threats, and they also understand the threats as well. So those are the few things I just want to mention because people have, the panelists, they've already mentioned a lot of them. But collaboration, capacity building, sensitization, and engagement with the law enforcement would help us navigate those streets. They are very, very rare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for sharing the perspective from Nigeria and also, of course, West Africa. I'm looking around the room to see if there's any hands up. Of course, colleagues who are sitting in front of us, please, you are welcome to come over to the U shape to take the mics as well. I know there are mics on the side of the room if you would prefer that as well. If not, I'm going to use a little bit of moderator prerogative. Oh, I see Dr. Nazar.
Hello.
Nazar, please go ahead. Nazar, 1 second. You need to turn on your mic.
When you have to use it, touch it. Don't touch. That's what they're saying. Thank you so much, Jennifer and team NRIs from all over the globe. My intervention on this front will be let us also focus on the local talents in terms of our universities are creating and co-creating a lot of young people with a lot of skills. And what I find is that the local consumption in terms of companies and the governments and even civil societies are not actually using these local talents and the local skills that have been created by our universities. So while we are talking about combating all these cyber threats, we need to focus using the resources that are there. The young people from the universities, they are very learned on ICTs and cybersecurity, but the applications and the skills from the local content are not being properly utilized. So I think that will be my contribution, so I can also yield time to others to contribute as well. The focus should be ensuring that we use the local content that is available to combat both local and global cybersecurity threats. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazar. Thank you, Nazar, for reminding us that, we absolutely need to rely on local talent and local content to also combat all of this. I do have one comment online, which I'll go first, and then I'll come to you, Carlos. So, Godsway, please go ahead and read out the question.
Okay. Okay. So I think Emmanuel is asking, what international frameworks do we have to empower law enforcement agencies in the global south?
Thank you, Godsway. So before I go to Carlos, I'm wondering if anybody up here on the panel or anybody in the room would like to answer Emmanuel's question. The question again is, what international framework we have to empower law enforcement agencies in the global south. Read it again so you have some time to think about the answer. While you're ruminating on this answer for Emmanuel, I'd like to go to Carlos. Please go ahead.
Thank you again. I think that one of the main words or concept we have to have is share. We share the room. We were in the same room yesterday in the main hall with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And in one moment, the girls stay saying aloud, I love you, I love you, I love you. And of course, I say, thank you, thank you. And this nice-looking guy look at me. And I say, let's share, let's share. That's what we have to say to government, to big tech companies. Let's share accountability, responsibility. Cybersecurity decision-making process is a shared process. That's why we strongly support the multi-stakeholder process. And share. This is the key issue for all of us. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Carlos. That was a great analogy. Maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt can solve all our cybercrime and cybersecurity problems, just drawing the attention and asking everyone that you need to share information.
He has a PhD on computer science.
We should call him to this room. Maybe that's how we're going to solve all of this, right? He will help us solve the IGF renewal, all of that. Dennis, please go ahead.
Maybe a short comment on my neighbor. Sharing would be fantastic. I love sharing. It's very nice. But institutionally, many of these organizations are biased against sharing. They have no interest in sharing, or they have interest in sharing certain things, but not other things. So we have to realize that while some of these corporations have goodwill, many of them are in the business of making profit, and they will share what they need to share. So what we increasingly see now is we have larger and larger companies doing things that traditionally were public utilities. But we have put them in the hands of private corporations who do not have a public ethos. They have a private ethos, they're there to make money. And we sort of let it happen, that's one thing, but to sort of rely on ethical frameworks and asking them to share and basically rely on their goodwill, I think is not the way forward. We have seen time and time and time again that when push comes to shove, they will go for the dollar and not for the public interest.
If I may actually ask a follow-up question, because in your in your first intervention and just now, you said, incentives are not there for sharing. What incentives do you think could oblige or could be to incentivize this sharing for different parts and different organizations?
I think it varies. I mean, I haven't thought the whole thing through, but the ISAC example shows you where competitors are actually able to agree on some common ground where they say, okay, we all benefit if the larger financial system and the transactions between us are safe, right? That's something where they go, okay, that's where we can cooperate. On other things, I think the general rule is when industry starts saying, no, we'll do it ourselves, we'll self-regulate, we'll do ethical framework, we'll do all these things, that means they're afraid of regulation, right? That's the only reason they're stepping forward to do this. That means that regulation may be the way forward, right? So you can't expect private companies to fully embrace a public task in a public way, right? That's not what they're there for. But we have a long history of having private companies subjected to certain rules to make sure the public interest is safeguarded. This is not a new thing, right? We have been doing this for centuries. There is a way of organizing this between public and private parties where you weigh in as a government and say, but this is the public interest, this needs to be safeguarded. So I'm afraid it's regulation.
That is definitely one answer. Regulation does answer certain things, but probably doesn't encompass everything as well. I'm going to use moderator prerogative to kind of come back to Dion because, listening about this and of course being in the DNS industry, being part of CCTLD, I wonder if you have some reactions regarding this because, of course, .Asia is also a registry operator. We have to follow what we are, our jurisdiction, what the kind of, laws that we need to follow. When we have, court papers or court orders to do certain things, that's how we take action. But perhaps from the Serbian point of view for the CCTLDs, are there similarities? Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I still believe that information sharing is important. I gave recent example from a couple of days ago. So we received complaints from some international organization or NGO, I'm not sure at the moment what they are, and they are sending us a couple of emails and notification that they find out that those websites are selling illegal weapons and that there are many of those sites in our zone. So we can easily say to them, send those emails to local police and do whatever you want. But we try to discover our data correct, and we also use our contact in police and public prosecutor office to make them to do something. So without that information we couldn't do nothing. Now we have 10 websites down with really illegal content. So without sharing information we couldn't do nothing, but I think it's still important and I believe it.
Thank you, Dion. I'm actually having trouble pressing this button here. Having the hot mics the whole time is bad, but not being able to press the mic to actually speak is also bad. So inherent tension, again, with voice. I don't want to leave the question unanswered that we received online from Emmanuel, but I'm wondering if Letty or maybe Leah would like to address that question. And the question is, what international framework do we have to empower law enforcement agencies in the Global South? And I'm assuming empowering law enforcement agencies, I guess maybe he means how they can take action, because I feel like law enforcement is pretty empowered everywhere. So maybe an adjustment to his question.
Thanks, Jennifer. From my point of view, I don't like to recommend Budapest Convention or maybe the UN Convention, because I have any consideration of each of these two tests. Actually, I think that Budapest Convention was created like a convention for the European Union countries, and some other countries around the world have adapted their legal framework of them. But, for example, the reality of the Global South countries are not the same that the realities on cybersecurity or cybercrime in the European Union countries. So I don't want to say like you should follow the text or the recommendation of Budapest or the UN cybercrime conventions. I think that we should take the best of both documents and then see what is better or what fits in our local legal framework.
Thanks, Leah. And Letty, did you want to add to this?
No, I think I share her sentiments, but I think just to add on that, maybe just briefly, is that as South Africa, we participate in the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. So I think maybe that could contribute to answering the question.
Yes, pressing the button to actually speak. There is one question that we just received in the Zoom room. So if I could just have Godsway read out the question, or I think it's maybe a comment.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so it said, what are the global implications to the varied approaches adopted within the AI posture across EU and US, and implications to service provider certifications? So that's the first question. And should I read all, or we'll go one after the other? I think this question is quite long.
It is quite long, but maybe just read the entire thing with respect to time.
Okay. So the second one states that, what does this mean for global South circummerism of these variable certified services? The implications of this AI posture on the cybersecurity and cybercrime posture is critical for Global South. So I think the first question is the second one is a follow-up of this first one.
Thank you, Godsway. So while our speakers and others in the room think about this, I want to see if there's any other questions online and in the room.
About the law enforcement?
About the law enforcement, you have one? Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, and there is a lot of frameworks. Maybe we can, every law is jurisdictional, but in issues like electronic commerce or cybersecurity, we need a legal framework from United Nations, for example, and they have several committees that works on, specialized on this kind of things. So even that the law is jurisdictional, geographically restricted to one country, we need a legal framework, and UNUDI and some of the bodies work all the time providing this kind of legal framework. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. I don't see any more hands or questions in the room. Nazar.
Yes, I just wanted to add on the Interpol. It's called Interpol Cybercrime Directorate. For the there are so many, and even the ITU has one for the has one framework for the that can assist the local enforcement agencies. For example, the Interpol Cybercrime Directorate is one of those, and I think Interpol is very known for being intercontinental, interregional, and it plays a part in the local context as well.
Thank you, Nazar, for sharing that and reminding us about this. I think without that, then I'd like to ask our speakers in reverse order. So in the reverse order that I initially asked you to speak, to just do a very quick wrap and really just the one takeaway that you want us to really take away from this session. So I will begin with Lati, please.
I think maybe we've also seen from the question that was posed that it is a need for harmonization. So we need to harmonize our laws. We need global and regional collaboration in doing that. And we need to ensure that there is inclusive governance. But I need maybe just to leave us with one thing, and it's something that I mentioned before, is that we need to prioritize human rights when talking cyber crimes, when talking cyber security. Because if we don't, we risk widening the digital divide and maybe weakening human dignity. So let's not undermine our efforts as a globe, as regions and countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Lati. Dennis, one takeaway?
Yeah, maybe I'll stick with my theme of information exchange. So I mostly focus it on the national level. But if we look at the international level, there is a lot to be gained. I think there really is a lot to be gained. We know it's possible, right? We have a global community of CSIRTs that are exchanging information in a trust-based system. I don't know if ISACs, for example, talk to each other in a sectoral way, in a broader sense, probably. This morning I heard a speaker from Albania saying, okay, they're really invested in sort of getting more information exchange in a regional way. But I think getting that going and also finding a way to sort of get more private information into that mix, that would be really good, albeit not necessarily easy.
Thank you, Dennis. Leah?
I want to remark that capacity building and regulation is not enough. We should work, it's like there are not two topics that we should work separately. We should still increasing the capacities and the knowledge of the population from they are kids to the old generations, and that if there is in some countries any conventions or any regulation has works, that doesn't mean that that the regulation they're also gonna works in your region or your country. We should take of consideration the politically, geographically, and economically context before to adapt or adequate like a regulation in any region of the world.
Thank you, Leah. Diane?
Thank you. I believe that permanent activities on improving security of system infrastructure and following actual threats is a good approach. So also raising the awareness together with relevant partners on a local and international level could bring the improvements constantly. Regulations, of course, is important, but usually very slow. So all of us have to do more before regulator find out the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And I guess I'll leave the last word to Carlos.
Thank you. I'm not. It's not easy for to get the shaded process from government or from international organizations, but we the citizens have not to forget that we are the boss really. If the government doesn't have the capacity to share the responsibility, the accountability, and the decision-making process, we can change the government. And if the company doesn't work observing the right condition of the consumers, we can change the company. We cannot buy their product or service. So we have a real power. We are not only passive actors, we are active actors, and we have to use our power to also be part of the decision in this kind of things. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Carlos. I do note that perhaps the person who asked the remote question didn't actually hear an answer to his question or her question, but we're happy to take this to the NRI mailing list, hopefully to get further experts to answer this. I'm not going to attempt to summarize what has been a very rich discussion, especially on the many issues that and many ways that different NRIs, different jurisdictions, different countries are tackling cybercrime, and on all the mitigation efforts, the inherent tension of info sharing, the actual practices of, I guess, CCTLDs and registry operators, and especially, I would say most importantly, with my bias on, we need to make sure it's an inclusive governance. We need to make sure the underserved, the voices that always get left behind are not further left behind in this conversation about mitigating, about combating cybercrime, and looking at best practices. So with that, I thank you all for your time. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the questions. Thank you to all in the room for a great session.